Tommy, hand me that donut over there and bring in my top
There's a
cop.
hold-up in the Bronx, Brooklyn's broken out in fights. There's a traffic jam in Harlem that's backed up to Jackson Heights. There's a scout who killed a child, cruised his through an idle wild.
Cathy, Hinners, where are you? Boy, Cathy, let's start right off the bat. Thank God you're exonerated. Apparently your article created a lot of death threats. The only problem was none of them were death threats.
Yeah, and you don't see that story anywhere, do you?
By the way, as somebody who deals with death threats, me, you, Dr. Warner, and others, what a joke that was from the beginning anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I call that a Tuesday for me on Facebook.
Oh, my God. You know what? Be a man and take the stuff. There was no credible threats. A lot of those came from actual quotes from the Quran, actually, about beheadings and things. But, yeah, the police did come out and say that he, in fact, had no, direct threats that were made. There were hopes, there, but they weren't direct threats. And so it's kind of been linked, and this is, an issue for me, is that they have linked these death threats, to Daily Roll Call and myself.
It's to discredit you. It's to make you appear to be radical and crazy. When, of course, all you're doing is posting facts. Facts that a biased media won't. Facts that a few biased members of school boards won't acknowledge, but they're still facts and they're true. Yeah. And again, none of us, they create straw men. I did this with Julie last FR, but I'll repeat it for those listening now. In the case of, I don't mean disrespect. I don't know the guy from Adam. If it's Hullett or Hewlett, I think it's Hullett. But if Mr. Hullett thinks that this is about us being afraid that kids are going to convert to Islam, that's not the case. The problem we have is, and I don't have a problem with them teaching Islam. In fact, teach a lot of it. Just teach it historically accurate. Teach it completely. And don't teach a version paid for by terrorist organizations.
Yeah, exactly.
That has been the rational, simple problem that we want to be not politically correct, not indoctrinating. We want to be educational and accurate and complete. That's always been the problem and is. Which, by the way, this shouldn't be a shock because ISIS is Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda already had a magazine. But you will find that for those school board members, no matter what county they're in, and I've lost respect for virtually all of them in Williamson County, but there's plenty to go around, this is something that they are really excited about in the Al-Qaeda Inspire magazine.
Yeah, and I think more people should look at that because there are some articles in there exactly what they are saying that jihadists need to do in the West is coming from Al-Qaeda and from ISIS. And so this isn't something, different than the practitioners of Islam here in this country believe. We have CARE that is embracing, groups such as Black Lives Matter when, in fact, the Al-Qaeda magazine is turning around and saying this is how we will help the black community to get rid of the white supremacists and the white privileged people. And so I think people need to start looking at the ideology from this magazine and how it's being applied here. CARE is doing exactly what Al-Qaeda has outlined, by embracing the Black Lives Matter movement. But it's really disturbing what they say. They urge for, black groups to form groups here to target, to assassinate, actually, who they consider to be racially motivated politicians. So, you can see that the hate and the vitriol is alive and well in this magazine. So I suggest people read the magazine and see how it's being applied in Western culture.
By the way, it's not just the indoctrination in our schools, which the Muslim Brotherhood and terrorist organizations would love. Muslim Brotherhood, I specify because we know this is a part of their playbook. I mean, we've seen their playbook. It came out in a terrorist trial. But this has also been their historic modus operandi. They love to play for the next generation and avoid all-out war and conflict, whereas Al-Qaeda will come in guns a-blazing and knives sharpened. So that's not a shock. I think what was most shocking in this Inspire article is how they embrace the hijacking of racial division, whether it's today's story at the University of Missouri, which is thought police, and again, they're gonna want to fire a president who has done nothing. So every time somebody anecdotally does something, they want all kinds of change. But this is, and we saw this in Ferguson specifically, they love to hijack racial division, but they've got a much bigger plan.
Yeah, they do, and I think that for us, it's very clear to see when you read their words and you see what they say about how if you join us in Islam, there is no discrimination, there is no oppression, there is redistribution of wealth. This is what CARE, here in this country is telling the black communities here. You know what? If you come to Islam, you will never be discriminated against. We will stand with you. But the interesting thing is they're basically pushing the black community to do their dirty work. They want the blacks to kill the whites. They want the blacks to kill the politicians that they feel have oppressed them. And yet then they say that we'll support you. You go ahead and you do this. You kill these people, and we'll support you.
But for good reason, Cathy, this has been working. It's like I always bring up Barack Obama's only Christianity. It's black liberation theology. It's liberation from white oppression. It's a gospel of race, a hatred towards Israel, America, Jews, whites. And that's why Obama's church, Trinity, everybody remembers the Jeremiah quote, GD America. No, they made Louis Farrakhan their person of the century. Mm-hmm. All right, so you think to yourself, well, why would a Christian church make a black Islamic activist their person of the century? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so there's always that intermingling. Hatred binds them together. The cause of chaos, the cause of division binds them together. But it's a huge surprise for them in the end when they find out it's only going to cost them their eternal soul and probably ultimately their freedom, because it is a form of government, a form of punishment, a form of... there's probably a lot of things in the Constitution they like that they'll be giving up as well. I want to talk about, we've found out now, about 90% sure anyway, but investigators of the Russian plane crash in Egypt that killed 224, the experts are 90% quote-unquote sure that a noise heard in the final seconds of the black box cockpit recording was the explosion caused by a bomb. Therefore, it's looking pretty obvious now. Putin targets ISIS. ISIS gets back and blows up Russian jet. Now, that's a Russian ISIS story. Here's one you haven't heard of. Now, the difference is we've heard of this one, right? Here's the one you probably didn't hear of, and that is that a Queens man has been charged after allegedly shoving 2 flight attendants, punching a 3rd flight attendant, and threatening to blow up a plane during a flight from New York City to South Florida. The 29-year-old New York Queens person facing federal charges of interfering with a flight attendant and threatening to destroy an aircraft was jailed in Palm Beach County pending a bond hearing on Monday. By the way, he just so, and this is purely a coincidence, just so happens to be a Muslim immigrant from Albania. Other than that, and of course it shows you the bias in America today, because a lot of people think that, Russia is the one that's keeping this from being so obviously an Al-Qaeda targeted bombing, because they don't want like a defeat. He's on the field targeting, killing ISIS, and they get 224 of his people blowing up a plane. But we shouldn't be throwing stones at media bias, because we're not much better than Russia. There's a huge story that nobody in America is hearing about.
No, and the media seems to be having this convenient blackout on some of these stories, and that being one of them. And I think, we're only hearing what this administration wants us to hear. I mean, we haven't even heard or seen some of the pictures, that are coming to us from Europe, the way that the Islamists are destroying cities there, and the way that they're basically taking over. You talk about no-go zones. I mean, they've been created all over the UK. Germany is having horrible problems. Wherever these mass amounts of Muslim refugees from Syria are coming, it's bringing turmoil. And so, this media is deciding to maintain its, secretive pact or whatever it is with this administration by not telling the American public this is what's happening, because he's setting us up for thousands to come into this country.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where I was heading next. Cathy Hinners is with DailyRollCall.com. That's the website. She served in law enforcement for over 2 decades in New York, came to Tennessee to retire only to get her toughest case. You can follow all the factual trail of evidence at DailyRollCall.com, and she visits with us every Monday. Brigitte Gabrielle has put out a warning. These are dangerous times, and the American citizens must be ready to take action to protect our country. And now, a refugee invasion is currently taking place in Europe and transforming the continent. For Islam, each day we see more and more devastating impact. By the way, she highlights one fact that the silence is deafening for me. But, first of all, I shared a stat on Friday that I don't think most listeners believed, Cathy. I had a few of them even ask me for the link. But in the last 5 years, we have brought, as refugees, a whopping 52 Christians in 5 years. 52 Christians. One Yazidi in 5 years. And, of course, the Christians and the Yazidis have been receiving most of the persecution. 99% of them are all Islamist. I think 75% of them are young, fit men that look like soldiers. Usually when you have refugees, you see mom and children and flies and famine. None of that. I mean, this is so obviously a troop deployment. And then we find out that ISIS has made the claim that they have slipped in some 4,000 of their members into Europe in the refugee status. And now here comes a boatload of them for America. This is a clear and present danger. And if people don't communicate with their members of Congress, as Brigitte is warning, well, we saw what 19 did in a single day. Can you imagine what thousands could do?
Well, and there it is. You know, if 19 could bring America to its knees for the first time, you know, for us experiencing this type of terrorism, what do you, like you said, what do you think thousands of them are going to be capable of? The FBI has already said that they know that in every single state in this country there are operatives of ISIS that are already in place. So they're here. They're here in Tennessee. We talked about the imam from Memphis saying that he actually counsels Muslim men that are coming to him struggling with the idea of whether or not they should fight for ISIS. So how do we look at their own words and deny the fact that this is a problem? And I think, you know, when you listen to the people like these actresses and actors that are, one just came out this weekend, a female Hispanic actress said something to the effect of, it's our turn to migrate. If you don't like it, get out. I mean, we're seeing a whole structure being changed because this is the way, you know, the future is supposed to look. And so, you know, we're accepting people and we're tolerant people. But you know what? It's time to shed that. It's time to start fighting because it's going to be too late. I don't know, Michael, that it isn't too late. I really don't know if we can get this back. We have the Muslim Brotherhood in just about every facet, every agency of the United States government. And so I don't know that we can change this. I don't know if it's too late. And the more he brings in here, obviously, the worse it gets. And I think people are listening to, I think... And
by the way, there's people listening to you right now, and I'm sure the Columbia Daily Herald would be one of them, that would presume you're just an anti-Islamic hate monger for just even saying that. And again, nobody ever takes the very legitimate threats and points that we make and comment on them. They just, like the Southern Poverty Law Center, say, well, you're a hater, and they dismiss your thoughts. I'm going to do a great example of that next half hour with The View. You're going to see the mental illness of liberalism on display at The View. You're going to get a view of mental illness from The View like you've never seen before. But it's just, you know, and by the way, in this case, it's hilarious because it just shows that the best that these liberals can offer women is you kill your baby. You can get minimum wage. You can get some time off to stay home with your kids if you need an extended period of time, which, by the way, is what's driving down the wage. And Carly Fiorina, of course, puts them in their place, but they can't hear it, and they won't hear it. They even deny that, you know, Planned Parenthood was selling body parts. Well, if they weren't selling body parts, why are they committing to continue to sell them but not make profits from it? I mean, it's just delusional. And so there's people in that Columbia Herald that just see you as that, but they don't ever comment on things you say. And by the way, there's nowhere in that article that it mentions that Hullett was never had his life threatened, according to the police. So, but I mean, this is just, it's just demonize if it doesn't fit the narrative. And I'll tell you, I don't see an awakening tomorrow to reality, an awakening back to truth, awakening back to facts. Political correctness is still ruling the day, and we're going to rue the day.
Yeah, and those are the liberals are the same people that a person could be beheaded in front of them, and it would still be denial that somebody edited something. That there's such denial.
Or that's not the real religion. That's just somebody that hijacked it, and then you'll show them the Quran, and they won't even acknowledge it, and then they'll just start calling you names. I mean, it's the same game over and over again. I hate to say this out loud, and I know you're probably going to agree. Until we get smacked, and I mean the snot smacked out of us, I'm talking something that would make us pray for the 9/11 day of just 3,000. Mm-hmm. Until that happens, there will be no awakening. Unfortunately, many more are going to have to die, or we're going to watch this be slowly overthrown and get to a point of irreparable harm.
Completely agree with you, and I'm not sure these hardened liberals will even still then. I've always
said these liberals are going to get us all broke or killed or both.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that they're capable of understanding the depths of this problem, you know. They're too interested rather, you know, to discredit someone or try to bring someone down or to attack personally. Like we've said, they use emotion, we use facts. And so I can only hope that people continue to look at the facts that we present. You know, like I've said before, articulate where the hate is. In the majority of my articles, there's no hate, it's fact, but that, you know, it seems to be fact is the new hate, fact and truth are the new hate. But I feel sorry for those people. I actually pity those people that refuse to at least acknowledge that there is a problem or that they continue to put their head in the sand, because it's going to be too late when they take their head up out of that sand. They better have a burqa and a Quran next to them, because that's going to be the reality very soon if they don't.
Well, as Brandon just wrote me, you know, he thinks it's stupid that we would want to teach Islam in its entirety or accurately, that it has no place in school, and should we get into the Crusades, sure. Should we get into Judaism? See how stupid that sounds? No, you probably don't, because all you want to do is beat the drum for Jesus against these dirty, untrustworthy Muslims. Bobby Hullett was the recipient of a load of nastiness from conservatives and Christians in name only, but apparently your only response is that you call him a moron on his show. And I mean, this is the kind of... And by the way, that's some guy from Columbia, Tennessee, by the way.
How do they know those people making those comments or those threats? How do they know they were Christians? I mean, you know, that's the thing that kind of, you know, cracks me up. Here they are, you know, assuming that these people that wrote these death threats, and half of them were from out of this state.
I called this Hullett or Hewlett a moron because the truth of the matter is, his point was, until there's a threat, go somewhere where there's a threat. Now, he's not telling you if you don't like it, move. He's just saying, this isn't a threat, which I disagree with. He gives no evidence to prove it's not a threat. And if you don't like it, go somewhere there's a threat. Well, the threat is you're teaching something that has been bought and paid for. It's enemy propaganda. It's indoctrination. It's not accurate and it's not complete. And parents don't like it. And you basically work for the parents and you're saying, I won't even hear it. I won't even acknowledge it. Then you go to the police and say you've been having death threats that even the police look at you and go, this is not a threat. This is not a death threat. You know, that's making a moron out of yourself. But that's the games that are being played, and until some people die, nobody's going to wake up, and they're always going to demonize us. I assure you, Brandon in Columbia or anybody else writing out there, that Cathy Hinners and I are the least of your problems and the least of your threats. We're never going to cut your head off. We're never going to blow up a car. We're never going to blow up or kill your family. But there are people with that intent, and you're far from safe from them. And you're playing with fire.
Keep hit those, you know, keyboard cowards, we call them. You just keep hitting, you know, all those little words that mean a lot to you. But, you know, don't bother getting the facts or actually standing up for what's right in this country. I wouldn't want them to do that.
Or just go back to reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and civics, and avoid these type things. Or I think there is some reasonableness in waiting till they're a little older. You know, I wouldn't have wanted to try to process this in 7th grade. No. When I was 11 years old, but I was much more mature at 16, 17. I mean, I think there's also an age-appropriate time for doing it, but when you do it accurately, and I think people can handle it. I think a lot of these 7th graders already know what they're getting is a lot of hogwash, but they've obviously gone too far into the indoctrination and practicing of religion, and a lot of parents are upset, and so far nobody's listening. I give up. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah.
All right, Cathy, they can follow these and other stories on your hate monger website. At dailyrollcall.com, and we'll talk to you next Monday or sooner if conditions warrant. I got to go beat the drum for Jesus in war.
There you go. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Cathy Hinners.